We've looked at managing the Azure environment using the API. Let's look at it at a higher level working with PowerShell.
I have to tell you, I do a lot of my interaction with Azure using PowerShell or using actually the cross-platform client tools. But we're going to do PowerShell here, and we'll just go ahead and look at how you could manage websites or web applications, which actually internally with PowerShell are still called websites, even though they're web applications now. In any case, let's take a look at what we have to work with, what we can do as far as interacting with our Azure websites. First of all, one of the first things that, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, one of the first things you probably want to become familiar with is the git commandlet, and that's going to give you a list of commands that are loaded based on some kind of search pattern. The other one that you want to be really familiar with is git help. Those are pretty much requisites for anything you do with PowerShell, or at least me. So I'm going to get a command with anything related to Azure website. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting with this, even though web apps are created as part of the resource management model, and usually the resource management model commandlets have Azure RM. In this case, well, it doesn't. It's just Azure website. Not that that really matters, but there you go. So those are all of the things that we can do with our Azure websites. And so the first thing I might want to do is get Azure website. And if I run that, I'm going to get a list of all of the Azure websites that I've got in my system right now. Okay, and notice that all of these are running. And let's say, for example, that I wanted to stop all of these. And one thing that you can do, it's pretty cool, and I really do want to stop all these because I really don't need these things running, is I could get Azure website and pipe that into a stop Azure website. And that's going to cycle through, and it's going to stop all of my Azure websites. Now, it's going to take a little while, so I'm going to pause the recording. Well, that actually took significantly less time than I expected. And if I get my websites again, it should come back that they're all stopped now. And that's just a very simple example of some of the things you can do. I'm not suggesting that you go out to your production site and just say, hey, look, I can stop all the websites. That might be bad. Anyways, let's look at some of the other things that we could do. So let's say I want to create a new Azure website. Well, it's as simple as saying new dash Azure website, and give it a location of East US. Give it should be able to just do that with name. There's so many other things. Notice all of the different properties that you can set, lots of GitHub things, but really all I want is the name. And enter. And that's going to create a new Azure website. Again, I'm going to pause while that processes. Now, when this first pops up, it looks a little bad because you can see these things that say errors. But if you look at what those are related to Azure Table Trace. And if I scroll up a little bit, I can see that the state of this is running. And if I were to get my Azure websites again, I should have one that is actually running, and that's the NCG new demo. And I can also, if I want, stop that. So I could just say stop Azure website, and that's going to be NCG new demo. That should stop fairly quickly. And in fact, at this point, I really don't need that. So I'm going to remove the Azure website. And it's going to ask me if I really want to remove it. I do, in fact, really want to remove it. And I'm going to pause while that processes, and then we'll show the list. Oh, there we go. I didn't even have to pause. And because I'm too lazy to type it out, we'll just go up to it and hit enter. And now I no longer have that website. So although the net effect of this demonstration was actually nothing, many things that you can kind of take a look at and go through. You've got the idea of retrieving a list. You've got the idea of interacting with individual items. You've got the ability to determine what PowerShell commandlets are available using the get command. And so again, just a very quick demonstration in one aspect. Pretty much as far as I can think, everything that I've shown you during the entirety of this class, by and large, could be done through the PowerShell interface. Probably, having said that, you could probably go back and look and find one thing that wasn't, but pretty much everything that you can do in Azure, you're going to be able to do through Azure PowerShell.
If you're not familiar with PowerShell, it's definitely something you want to become familiar with. There's a lot that you can do that you may not need to go to that API level to work with, particularly if you're looking at automating processes within the Azure environment.